actually take stock of, kind of what is your internal relationship to yourself. And, there's many methods to do this. One might be journaling, right? Another, though, might just be deep contemplative thought or meditation. But you need to ask yourself some serious questions. And one of the things that I kind of said at this last retreat in Mexico that kind of got an ooh from the crowd was the best leaders develop an intimate relationship with their conscience. And I think that developing that intimate relationship with your conscience is absolutely critical for living a congruent life, and therefore is absolutely critical for living a fulfilled life. But how do you do that? And, one thing I would just say is, how often are you actually thinking about your behaviors? How often are you actually even just self-aware to recognize, what did I do today? What did I do that was good? What did I do that was bad? So taking constant stock of your behaviors and how you actually ended up at them. Were they really, intentional behaviors? Were they kind of automatic behaviors? Did you get triggered early on in the morning from something and therefore the rest of your day just spun out of control? And coming back to that question consistently, how did I act today? And was it consistent with my values? You can ask that and contemplate it. You could ask that in a journal question. Right? How have my behaviors been? Have I been congruent with my top 5 values, today or this week? So developing that intimate relationship with your conscience is a really good starting point. And somewhat kind of most people don't want to do that because it can be so convicting. Because a lot of times it's like, no, you've been acting, completely out of control. You're not living in alignment with your values, and you have some shaping up to do. And that can be really convicting, but it's also super rewarding. So I really want to challenge everybody here today to ask themselves, how close has my relationship with my conscience been? And have I allowed myself to be convicted lately? Mike, I know you had some tips about how to bring this practically also, not just into your personal life, but also into business. And I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Well, first to double click on what you just said is sometimes we can't evaluate our actions because we're like, oh, I did great. I did everything I was supposed to do. So sometimes we need to look at the reactions of others to our actions. And just by analyzing how did they receive my behavior? I felt pretty good, but how was it received? Because sometimes life doesn't respond to intent. We could have intended something and the intent was great, but it might not have been received the way we wanted to be received. So sometimes looking at the reactions can also be a great way to keep score on this personal congruency or on this practical methodology as you're doing some self-reflection too.
That's so smart, Mike. I'm so glad you said that. And also when you're looking at the reactions, make sure you're not judging other people's reactions, right? And saying, I got a negative reaction, but that's just because he's an idiot, right? Or, that's just because that person's immature. It's like, no, maybe, but also, look and see, especially if a lot of people, right? There's like multiple data points. It's like, everyone is kind of trending in this direction with their reactions, then it's a you problem, right? It's kind of the classic, if someone's been divorced 3 or 4 times, it's not their ex's fault. So
Andrew, that's what you've been so helpful with me at is tapping into this deep curiosity. Because judgment, and you taught me this years ago, is judgment is like that baseline of violence. This baseline of violence is judgment. And it's like, we don't want to go into judgment. How can we replace it with curiosity? And you brought that to me years ago, and it made a world of a difference for me. So if someone's listening to this and says, shoot, I kind of judge a good amount. I don't intend it. I don't mean to, but I just do. How could they explore curiosity deeply more so than judgment?
How can they explore curiosity more than judgment? You're putting me on the spot. I love it. So I would say as a starting point, we always want to just be curious before we're critical. So the concept there is always assume that there's something you could have done better. So that's maybe like a starting point. So if you're getting a particular reaction from people, always assume that they're reacting and responding to something that you're putting out, right? And again, communication, to circle back on what you said, isn't what you intend to say, it's what's received. So you need to ask yourself, what was received? Sometimes that's in my communication. Sometimes it's somebody has a particular communication receiving style and the delivery method wasn't, congruent with their way of receiving information.
And that also implies that I have ownership, that I am actually responsible for those around me. And I don't think that every single person takes on that responsibility or takes that much ownership over others in their life and how people respond. So would that be a presupposition that everything and everyone that is in my environment, I have the ability to influence, or their reaction to how is that a presupposition here then?
Yeah, absolutely.